Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Kicking for Home NCAA Indoor Champs preview. I'm your host, Ben Drury, alongside Donny Speas. How are you today?
I'm doing pretty good, Ben. How about yourself?
Doing pretty good, ready to talk about some track here today. So
It's the best
basically,
part of the year.
yeah. So basically, we're going to be discussing some, conference meet takeaways, some biggest surprises, like who's scratched and stuff like that. Some NCAA outliers who could possibly shake some things up and surprise some people. And then finally, we'll talk about the least to most compelling events. So first off, just want to talk about, some brief conference meet takeaways. What were some takeaways that you had from the NCAA, like conference meets?
Well, I think across the board, you see a lot of fast times, and this means a lot of interesting scenarios that popped up all over the place. Something that really stood out to me was what Liam Murphy was able to do in the Big East championships, because we had seen Liam Murphy. I mean, he's an athlete. He's made his name. He's typically more of a miler, at least from what I always think about. He's a very strong miler. He's performed well at NCAA championships in the past. I mean, this guy, there's a reason why he was at the Millrose Games this year. He's up 338 over 1500 on the indoor oval. But seeing him go out in solo at the Big East Championships at 942, that was wildly impressive. I wasn't watching the race live, but I caught a couple replays and clips of it. It appeared to be simply nothing more than a time trial scenario with just him and one of his teammates. And then it was just impressive. And then going back a bit later, and once all the entries came out, you see that we don't see Liam Murphy entered in the mile, and he's all in on the 3K. And I think it's pretty interesting. I'm sure we'll probably get down to that a bit more in the scratches department, but I think that was one of the most impressive performances of last weekend.
Yeah, I mean, I'll agree with you on that one, because he only ran, like, as you said, like 742 in that meet, and you said like solo. And if you're just looking at the list of like entrants and stuff, he's only listed as like the 12th fastest, qualifier, which just kind of goes to show, the depth in that event and like all the people who are, like going all in that event like he is. I mean, personally for me, my biggest takeaway was like NAU, like they're not in like the Big 12 or like the SEC, like all of these, they're more established as of late, as of these like historically very dominant, but they were in the Big Sky and they dominated as they usually do, with Colin Solomon, Nico Young, all of their big guys, coming home and bringing really fast times and just, easily qualifying into the NCAAs.
Well, adding on to that, what I thought was interesting is that they really seem to be going more all in for the points. I mean, you got guys like, when's the last time you've heard of Theo Quacks running at 800? I can't remember a time when that's happened. I mean, but he won the conference title. He won it over Colin Solomon. He won it over Nico Young. He won it over Kang Nowak, and a lot of some competitive athletes from up at Weaver State and some other stronger Big Sky programs. But I mean, they came there to win a team title. That's what it showed. That's what it looked like, and they dominated. I mean, you go 1, 2, 3, 6 in the mile. You go 1, 2, 5, 6 in the 8. 1, 3, 5, 6 in the 8. It's all very impressive, and I think we may see NAU's identity slowly being changed over time. We always think of them as a long distance dynamic duo, and we're always going to think of them that first. I mean, they haven't finished worse than second in cross country in years, but with what Solomon's been running, both what he ran in the 800 last year, what he's done this year in the mile, and even seeing these guys dip down. I mean, 150 for which won the title. It's not NCAA world caliber class, but it's still a dang good time. And then seeing what they can do in the DMR is also very impressive. And it was a class act there by the men from Northern Arizona.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if you've watched like the Track All Access, like workout videos where they have like these huge groups of guys doing these like crazy workouts, and they're all like running these very fast paces. And like I don't know, NAU, I haven't looked into their sprints as much, but they're more, distance based, and that's kind of what they're known for. So it's kind of on the harder side to win a team title just from those, like distance points. So it's like whenever they do that, have people running different events to win that points, just goes to show their like dominance as a team.
Yeah. And just one bit about NAU, I gotta give some credit to their women's side. I mean, they were just as dominant, and sometimes it's still hard to overlook them. But they actually won the meet by an even larger margin, and arguably they had a better team performance, I'd say. And if you look at an event like the women's 3K, they went 1, 2, 3, 4. The 5K, they both went 1, 2, 3, 4 in the 3K and the 5K, and I think it's just as deserving as it's just as worth bringing up. They may not have many athletes on the national stage this year, but it still was a wonderful performance by them.
Yeah, I mean, even like their as of late, their women's team has gained some, has gained some ground. Like I know in this NCAA cross country, they did very well, placing pretty high up with, the likes of NC State, who has been a very has cemented itself as a very dominant cross country program.
I mean, I'll be honest, I was lucky enough to be at NCAA's, and I thought NAU, the women, were going to take it. I thought we were going to see an NAU sweep, but that's a different topic for a different time. I could talk for hours about that as well. Yeah. What else did you find pretty interesting from the conference meets?
I thought, in the SEC, Parker Valby, who has, she won the NCAA XC championships and has been, as of late, the very dominant force in the women's, longer distance, like 5K, 3K, 5K distance. I think, she was in the slow heat of the SEC 3K, and, there was some controversy about, pacing by teammates and stuff like that. So it's just kind of interesting, just what were your thoughts on that?
Well, I mean, I know what you mean about the controversy. I can't remember exactly which of her teammates. I think it was Elise Thorner was one of them. I can't place my name on the other one. But having them, from what I heard and from the interviews I saw, it appeared that they were actually there to keep Parker Valby going slower. They didn't want Parker going that fast because they knew what was in store, especially and she appeared to be a little bit banged up she had some KT tape on her. I mean, that's always – it goes hand in hand with Parker Valby. When you think of Parker Valby, you think of the cross training, you think of the unconventional training methods. And I was a little bit worried that we hadn't seen her since that Boston 5K way back in December. But I think what the Florida coaching staff did was brilliant by working her into the DMR in an event where they were kind of on the edge of qualifying, but still a very low stakes environment where they could bring her in, have her run the mile leg there. And then that's kind of a warm up, and then get her there as a time trial and the slow heat of the 3K the next day with a couple of teammates facing her. And it looks to be a pretty good showdown between her and mainly Markovic, but there's a couple other athletes that could give Valby some trouble in the 3K this upcoming weekend, and I'm very excited for that.
Yeah, I mean, just looking at, like the results, if you see, I mean, she ran away with it. Like she won by 20 plus seconds. I mean, running like 8:42, and the next closest was 9:06. Like, I mean, and if you're just looking down the results, you see there's a bunch of her teammates who either there's about 2 of them who just didn't finish. Like I haven't watched the race. I saw some clips of it, so I'm not sure if those are the exact people or not. But it's just kind of the coaches are almost thinking like, we know that you could run that fast, and like whenever you're going up against those super fast people, you're gonna be a contender, but you got to kind of hone it down a little bit right now so you can have that for later. I mean, oh no, go ahead.
Well, so go ahead. Go ahead and finish up about Parker Valby. If there's anything else you want to add about that.
No, I was just gonna say if you had any other takeaways from some other conferences.
I got one more there for you. So Alex Mayer, I'm a huge fan of Alex Mayer. I always have been. He's so consistent. He's always at the top front, and I think he's the biggest reason why Oklahoma State won this top cross-country title a couple months ago. He's just such a veteran presence. And we forget that he was, I want to say, 8th in the 5,000 and 5th in 3,000 at last year's national meet on the indoor oval. And he looks to be rounding into form. He sneaked in a qualifier in 3K this past weekend, running 7:43 after conversions. And he's currently seated 15th. But at that meet where he just recently showed up, he was able to take the Big 12 title over athletes like Joey Noakes, Aiden Troutner, who just recently ran that sub-4 up at altitude, and a whole host of other very talented athletes at the Big 12 championships up to 3,000 meters. He's rounding into form perfectly. And I think Alex Mayer is going to be a top 5 name again in at least one of the 2 events. He's entered in both the 3K and the 5K. And I think he's going to finish top 5 in at least one of them, if not both, next weekend.
Mm-hmm. I mean, just looking at like the split by split of that race where he won that 3K title, he just slipped in front of Silas Winders from Iowa State, but he was very, very consistent across the race, kind of sitting in at about 3rd place until about 1,800 to go, and then just kind of taking the lead from there, bringing it home, I guess. So I think it's just, and like you said, whenever going into the 3K at the NCAAs, like I know there's a lot of other big name guys in that race, like we talked about earlier, Liam Murphy, and lots of other guys. So that race will be one that'll be very fun to watch.
Well, I don't have anything else about the conference meets. If we want to move on to the big dance, I'm more than happy for that.
Yeah, sure. So next we're going to discuss biggest surprises, biggest notable names that have either scratched or haven't scratched. So who do you want to start off with?
Well, I think there's the biggest elephant in the room on the men's side. It's got to be Nathan Green. I mean, you get the defending NCAA 1,500-meter runner champion, and he's not racing the mile. That is mind-blowing to me. That's just I'm in shock by that. Anything else? What were you thinking when you saw that?
I mean, it is just crazy. I feel like he has some. I mean, he won the title outdoors. Yeah, or he's been very dominant. Running the mile and these other events. So it's just kind of, if you're so good at an event and you're scratching, what is that? What are some what are some plans that your team has for it? There's got to be a purpose behind it.
What I was thinking is that it's how Washington can get the most points. I don't know too much about the sprints and jumps that Washington has. I'm sure they're perfectly solid. I'm sure they're good. But it's just, I see 2 guys in the mile, in Luke Hauser and Joe Wascom, that are both capable of winning a title. And I think they could get more. I think they're trying to get as many points as they can, try to sneak onto the podium, get top 4 in there. Because both Joe Wascom and Luke Hauser, I think they're both score. They work very well together. And they should find themselves in the final. And they should find themselves in scoring position. And then when you look at what Nathan Green favored to do in the 800, I mean, I think Bizimana is a clear step at the field. I think Bizimana should win this title without an issue. He got upset kind of, but it was eventually ruled DQ. And he's the defending champion after that. And I think he should win this 800 title with ease. But after that, I think a Nathan Green can take down anyone else in the 800-meter field. I think Nathan Green should get second in this field. He's got enough endurance to make it through the rounds. He's clearly shown he knows how to work tactically, and he's won an NCAA title before. He knows how to win, and I just think Washington's going all in for these points, and maybe we'll see what happens. This could affect some of the DMR seating. I mean, who are we going to see on which leg? With not as much recovery time for Nathan Green, it may make sense to maybe not put him on the mile, not put him on the 1,200 leg, and keep him on the 800 leg to get a little bit extra rest.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it's kind of like, we talked about earlier, Theo Quacks from NAU. When was the last time he's ran an 800? It's kind of the same thing. They're pushing for the team title when they're, sometimes they're a lot more working on the individuals. We want to push this one individual in this event. I mean, kind of moving down the list, we've got Graham Blanks, who almost kind of stood out to me as, one of the most notable scratches. Because, if you look at the men's 5K field, it's just absolutely stacked. There's so many big names. a lot of familiar names, a lot of familiar faces, and just to see him, the NCAA XC champion, like scratching. Like, what were your thoughts on that?
It's an elephant in the room. We also have to address this. He ran so stupid fast in December. I mean, at the time, it was an NCAA record. It was under the Olympic standard. It's everything that it possibly could be. But I'm not shocked by this. It's got a big impact on the field, but I'm not shocked. I really am not shocked. I've heard that he was out there in crutches, and he's DNF'd or DNS'd a couple races. I'm not shocked at all. We're not seeing Grand Blanks on the starting line, and as much as it sucks, is what it is.
Yeah.
Megan Hunter is the other big name for BYU that is going to be, even that I feel kind of wrong saying, but between Riley Chamberlain not contesting the mile and opting for the DK, the 3K DMR double, I think it's very telling about what BYU is going to be trying to focus on going into this meet. And the 3K is just a little bit of, let's see what we got left. But I feel like BYU may be going all in for this DMR.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know too much about it, but I know, like, if you're just kind of looking at some of the other teams in the DMR field, you've got NAU. I mean, not 100% sure. I'm just looking at, the kind of list of who's scratching and who's in it. I mean, BYU is, along with Notre Dame, Providence, Washington, as like the top 4 teams in that women's distance medley relay. I mean, really, they're all within like a second of each other. And, it's a relay race. Anything can go down. So it'll just be interesting to watch,
Yeah. I mean, who knows? Someone drops the baton, it goes off the rails, and doubling back. The DMR is always the most chaotic event at these championships. And yeah, I'll just be very curious to see how Dalji Taylor plays her cards and see what order in what events these women will be running on this relay come Friday night.
Yeah. I mean, just kind of moving on down. I mean, Nico Young, right? Well, one, he's the fastest qualifier in the men's mile, with, he ran that crazy sub 4 mile he got like super close to sub 4 at altitude, which like,
I think it was 357 up there.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And which equates to like a 348 at like sea level, which, I mean, one, if you know anything about the NAU dome, like there's conversions from like the dome to just a normal track, and then it's super high at altitude. Just like that time was absolutely crazy to be run.
So a little bit, I went to a junior college in Arizona last year, and I opened up my season in Flagstaff. Let me tell you, those altitude conversions, they are well-deserved, and they're very real. Mm-hmm. But this is another one, somewhat at Grand Blanks. I'm not too surprised. I don't think Nico Young was going to win a title in the mile. He has the great time, but even he admits he doesn't have the foot speed to contend with a lot of these guys. I'm not that shocked. I think he's making a much smarter move, focusing on the mile 3K double. He's done some really good work focusing on his tactical prowess in the 3K, like what we saw way back when in the December invite of Nico Young winning that section of the 3K with a pretty nasty kick. And then going back and seeing some true time trial fitness with that 12:57 NCAA record, I think Nico Young's making the right choice here.
Yeah. I mean, definitely kind of gotta play your cards right, because, like there's a lot of these other guys, like we talked about the Washington guys who are very mile focused, whenever Nico Young and, all these other people who may have, the fast times are more 5K, 3K based. I mean, so are there anyone else? There's
a few more I got. You're kind of sticking with NAU. I want to look at Maggie Condon. I don't know if Condon. I'm hoping I'm pronouncing that right, but I did not see her going mile 800. I'm kind of shocked by that. In fact, she's always someone I've always kind of thought of, someone who's a bit more of a longer distance athlete, to be honest. But I say that, and I pull up her T-Fers, and she's got a recorded 400 on her profile. But I always expect her to be more of a miler. And that mile 800 meter double is always brutal. looking at the schedule here, she has less than an hour in between the heats of the mile and the heats of the 800 on Friday. And then she has even less. She only has 30 minutes between the mile and then the 800 on the Saturday on the finals. I think that's a very ambitious double. I don't think Congdon can win this double. I think she may be burning herself out. I'm not sure if she's going to qualify for the final I don't think she's qualified for the final in the 800, and I think this is going to have a negative effect on her chances to either be a title favorite, a title contender in the mile come Saturday.
Yeah, I mean, definitely. I know. I mean, going back to my running in middle school and doing like the mile 800 double. Like, I mean, well, no one in middle school is running as fast as the NCAA athletes, but I know definitely definitely that double can be taxing because you're going from the mile, which is a little bit more like tactical compared to like the 800, where it's like who can almost like sprint the fastest for 800 meters.
The 800 is a sprint, and that anaerobic stuff is going to kill you there. But I mean, hell, why not? I guess I think it's props to her. I just think I wouldn't make that move myself, but props to her. It's going to be very interesting to watch.
Yeah.
And a couple of the quick hits I got for the scratches, like I mentioned, Liam Murphy not contesting the mile. It's definitely interesting. We mentioned a bit about what he did in the 3K. He and his teammate Marco kind of running that time trial scenario there at the Big East Championships. But it's definitely interesting to see him 3K. And if you had to say which race in the mile of the 3K do you think Liam Murphy has a better shot at the title in?
I mean, you kind of all. I mean, in my personal opinion, I think you almost automatically kind of go to the the 3K. I mean, if you're just looking among these other big guys, it's a lot of very close times, like from Liam Murphy, who's 12th ranked, to like Kai Robinson at 7:36, and it's only like, let me see, about a couple seconds between them. And anything can happen on the day. And if you look like in the mile, right, there's a lot of very fast times, and in the mile it's a lot less. There's more Washington guys. There's a lot of really, really fast people. And
you always got to worry about Isaac Fast, and that man that man is tactically the most smart man in the NCAA. That's But I can't say. I don't know. I think what Liam Murphy will have is an advantage in the 3K. He's going to be a threat. He's going to be fresh. A lot of these guys. Kyle Robinson's going to be coming off a 5K. Parker Wolf. Parker Wolf's also going to be coming off a 5K. Granted, guys like Matt Strangio, he'll be completely fresh. Anas Asai will be coming off the mile. A lot of these guys are doubling back in something else. So I think that's kind of maybe what the coaching staff out there at Villanova was kind of thinking, trying to take advantage of that, maybe get them a little bit of a dark horse contender. And truthfully, I wouldn't be shocked if Liam Murphy finds his way onto the podium. He's got some of the best foot speed, if not the best foot speed of anyone in this field. So, I won't be shocked if he snags a top 3 finish.
I mean, most definitely. I mean, a lot of these championship style races, there's no it's not an Olympic trial where, you have to run a certain time to get the Olympic standard to go to the Olympics. But once you're at those championships, you can run however slow. And, sometimes in the mile, they don't even break 4 because people are running the tactical, they're playing the chess game to see who will win. I mean, and as you touched on, a lot of these people won't be fresh. Like, Nico Young's doing the 5K, 3K double. There's a lot of other guys doing that or other doubles. So, I mean, if it comes down to the slow race and then in the last 600, 800 meters, it comes down to a kick, I'm taking Liam Murphy almost every day of the week.
Yeah. There's only a couple guys in that field, right? All right. I got one more scratch, but I'm going to save that for a bit later because I feel like it plays in pretty well with some other questions. So
now we're going to be talking about some NCAA outliers, some people who could, dark horses, some people who could surprise, some other people. Now, you've written a lot of these down, so I'll let you kind of touch on these first. Now, what are some people who in certain events that you think could bring home a podium or just surprise a lot of people?
Parker Valley's doubling back. A lot of the girls from BYU are either going to be in the in the 5K or in the DMR that night before. And I think Amina Matu, with her tactical strength, she knows how to win. She won the ACC championships last week. I wouldn't be shocked if she can pull off an upset.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I'll agree. I'm 100% agreeing with you. You know, if you're just she's not like far down the list of, qualifiers. Like, she's the 4th fastest qualifier, and like you said, that tactical strength. I mean, a lot of these, Olivia Marquezich, the 3K steeplechase national outdoor champion, and Parker Valby, Maya Ramsden, who said is coming off World Indoors. Like, if it comes down, who's the freshest? I definitely think at the end of the day, she'll contend with those big favorites, and possibly bring home a podium. I mean, just kind of looking more down here, you got Parvez Khan on this list. He's
Rivaldo Marshall, who is a 146 guy. There's a lot of 146 guys in the men's 800 this year. Marshall is a junior college talent, which, as you know anything about my background, I'm a little bit of a sucker for the JUCO guys. I'm one myself, but he's won the JUCO national championships, which is an incredibly deep field, especially in the 800 meters. He's run 146 this year. He's tactically very strong, and in a year when I'll say the men's 800 is relatively weak this year compared to a lot of the past 3-4 years we've had, I think he could probably. I don't think he could win it, but I think he could maybe take 2nd or 3rd. And I don't think that's a very bold statement.
Yeah, I mean, definitely it's a little bit of a down year, you could say. You got only one person who's broken 146. I mean, ever since Will Sumner, from Georgia, who went pro as a freshman after he won the NCAA Outdoor 800, he goes pro. And then you've got guys like, as we touched on earlier, Nathan Green, who's coming in. He's with a 146 mid time. It's very, very open. There's a lot of different names. Everyone from the top 11 people are in the 146s. Like, it could definitely come down to anyone's race. Like, anyone could fight for a podium position, if that makes sense. So next person I want to talk about, Parvez Khan from Florida. He's ran 3:55 in the mile. He's currently ranked. He's currently ranked like 22nd in the mile. And as we've kind of touched on earlier, it's very open. A lot of these events are very, very open. There's a lot of guys with very similar times coming into it, in the 153 through 155 range. So really, I don't
even think with Khan, I don't even think it's about a time thing. I mean, he barely sneaked in. He, like you said, he was ranked in the 20s, based on the setting order list this year. And then you come in, a lot of scratches play to his favor. But I think the biggest thing we've seen from him is upsetting Anas Isai, who is a true title contender. And if he can do that as a true freshman, he's gotten better and better every race. I will not be okay, I'll be shocked if he wins this thing. But I think if he finishes as an All-American, I won't be shocked.
I mean, yeah, I'll agree with you on that one. I think almost kind of looking forward, a common theme among most of these races, or a lot of them, you've got the favorites, you got, them, but, you got the favorites, but then you got these people who are a little bit down the list, but have similar times and are very good tactical runners. Like, if it comes down to a tactical race, that you can expect them to be at the top of the field or pushing for a, podium position.
Yeah, those guys who have a lot of, especially in indoors, especially the people who've got a lot more tactical know-how. tactical experience. And some people just run better indoors. Like Isaac Basson is a great example. He always finds his way to sneak out. You never expect him, and he always finds a way to sneak in a top 8 finish. You almost always see that.
Mm-hmm.
One last person who I think could be another big dark horse is Lindsey Butler of the Virginia Tech Hokies. I feel like we forget about her and we overlook her too much. She's won this meet before. She is an NCAA champion. And last year she opted to compete in the mile. She finished 10th overall. Not a bad showing, but admittedly not what I was kind of hoping to see from her. And this year, I think Michaela Rose is the class of the field. I don't think it's going to get any better than Michaela Rose, but Lindsey Butler, she has that mile strength. She can work through the rounds. She's got a little bit more endurance than some sprint-focused runners coming to the 800 this year. And it'd just be foolish to count her out. And I had to mention her somewhere. She's an NCAA champ for a reason.
Yeah. I mean, don't want to sound like, like a broken record, but, almost if you're just looking at these, like, the heat sheets or like kind of the start lists or, like all the entrants who are going to be in these races, like she's placed at 16th, there's 5 people at 202 and, just it goes down to 159. Like that's only 3 seconds among 16 people, like that is not a small gap, and 3 seconds can be made up anywhere, so if it comes down to a race, like an NCAA champion has been there before, knows how to run a race, and could 1000%, push for a podium position.
So that's the dark horses I have. I'm good to move on to the what we think is the best race, to the least compelling race. I don't want to say worst race because they're all good races.
Mm-hmm. So, I'll go first, I guess. So I had it from least compelling to, the most compelling, which races will be the best to, watch for, most entertaining maybe. So I don't know how we want to do this, if we want to go like one by one,
let's
comparing
talk
each
about
other's.
Who we have number 10 spot, and then I'm sure we'll make our way down the list.
Okay. So I have at number 10, I have the women's 3K, just kind of, you got Olivia Marquezich, who we kind of talked about a little bit earlier, who's the steeplechase national champion. She scratched from the mile. She was the 3rd fastest qualifier in that race. And you got Maya Ramsden, Parker Valby, like we talked about, a dark horse. You got Amina Matug. Like definitely, I feel like that race, 3Ks are always kind of entertaining.
Now I'm shocked by that because I have the women's 3K at number 2. I think it's one of the best races of the night. Like, because Valby's a wonderful athlete. Valby we know how Valby's going to do, but Marquezich has run phenomenal. There's a reason why she's the top seed this year. Matug, like I mentioned earlier, you got the dark horse element in there. And Maya Ramsden, we don't know quite how she's going to be feeling. She's over in World Indoors right now as recording this podcast. Should be, if she's perfectly still on her A game, she'll be a factor. You got Billa Jepkuri of Oklahoma State, another wonderful athlete with a ton of range, who can mix it up in a lot of different scenarios. She's got wonderful tactical prowess. She's got lots of good foot speed. Then you even got a bit of a team element here with BYU has 3 athletes qualified, and having some team tactics there could make things interesting, even more than they already are. I think the women's 3K is one of the best events of the night.
Yeah, well, I won't argue that. It's definitely a lot of among this list. I kind of think for mine, a lot of these could have been moved around a little bit, if you know what I mean. But what was your 10? What was your 10 spot?
My 10. So I did my 9 and 10 spot. I know it's cheating. My 9 and 10 spot were a tie. I'm going with both the men's and the women's 800s. I just feel like you see a clear favorite in both races. You got Rose on the women's side, and then you got Bizimana on the men's side. Both are a class above the rest of the field. They're unbeaten on the season at over the half-mile distance. And yeah, Busy Mana won last year's Indoor National Championships. Rose won last year's Outdoor National Championships. Rose is, I want to pull this up, make sure I'm not contradicting myself. Michaela Rose is the only one under 2 minutes on the women's side. And Busy Mana is the only one under 146 on the men's side. I just don't see anyone else winning. I feel like it's just a race for second, and we kind of, on both sides, we know who it's going to be.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, I agree with that. So kind of moving, I had at my number 9 spot, I had the women's mile. So I feel like I'd say the men's mile, or not the men's mile, just the mile in general, in my opinion, is probably one of the most entertaining distances in track, one of the most best races in my opinion. So really had to be on here somehow. It's always, you never know who could win. You've got Maya Ramsden doubling. She has the fastest C time by 4:24 by about 2 seconds over Flomena Asikol. So, and you've got some other big names. You got
Chloe Forster's going to make some big moves in there. I can already see it.
Yeah, I mean, definitely just one race that could be kind of like we've talked about earlier. Just if anyone's in the race, could bring home a title.
Yeah, I think Maya Ramsden would be the favorite if she hadn't been at World Indoors. That's what it comes down to. I'm still a little confused on why she's doing this mid-season. But truthfully, I can understand it. You get the honor to represent your country. That's a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. I get that. Yeah, I had the women's mile down there at number 6. I think the Maya Ramsden storyline is the biggest one in here. But there's a lot of other, like you said, there's a lot of solid names. You got 5 athletes that are under the 430 barrier. And truthfully, I could see anyone – I could see about 5 names that win this. I could see Ramsden. I could see Askell. I could see May, Forster. It's perfectly chalked. The top 5 seeds, I think every one of them is capable of winning this title. I'm a big fan of Jeb Curry, especially on the indoor oval. She's got a lot of tactical prowess. She's got good foot speed. May is just an all-world athlete. I don't need to mention much about her. She's done wonderful stuff, especially in that DMR. She's been wonderful this season. But that's all I got for the women's mile.
Yeah, I mean, so if we I've seen your list. We both have the men's DMR at number 8, which, I mean, I think the DMR is probably, in my opinion, probably one of the most entertaining races, most entertaining races for sure. And definitely most chaotic because, you've got someone handing off to a 400-meter runner. Someone's bound to fall over or get knocked over. I mean,
Challenge get dropped. It's how it happens. But I feel like NAU should run away with this. I'd say should run away with this. Washington their lineup's going to be one to watch. Definitely Washington lineup's going to be one to watch. Team who ends up running which leg. But they've got 3 incredible good milers in Waskin, Green, and Hauser that could do pretty well at 3 out of the 4 legs in there. But I think NAU should take this. I mean, Colin Song, Theo Clax, and Nico Young are 3 of the best athletes in the NCAA by themselves. They've all got top 15 times, at the worst, top 15 times in NCAA history in their respective events. And I think having all 3 of them there is going to be nearly unbeatable, but it's definitely not a foregone conclusion. I think North Carolina should be in play there. Parker Wolf is an absolute dog on that mile. Ethan Strand has been it's been a bit more quiet this year, but it's easy to forget about how good he was last year and the potential we've seen. Andrew Reginard is a wonderful talent on the 400 meters. So yeah, he's got a lot of experience running the 400 and 800 in competitive championship scenarios at the high school level. And I think that's a great choice by the UNC coaching staff to put him on that DMR. But yeah, that's all I got for the men's DMR. Anything else that you want to add on there?
No. So kind of, Next, I have the men's 800 at number 7. Kind of like we touched on earlier, this is a race where it's kind of a little bit of a down year. You know, you got Yusuf Bizimana, my bad.
So,
You know, the only one under 146. But kind of my main talking point was, you know, Tanoda Matsatsa, you know, from Georgetown. He's run 146.87. He's a true freshman. He just broke, you know, he broke 4 miles as a senior, 4 minutes in the mile as a senior in high school. Like, what do you think? Like, could he get on the podium as a freshman?
I think he can get on the podium. I mean, during the earlier stages of the season, he looked like the guy to beat in the country. He's quieted down a little bit there, but I wouldn't be shocked, and especially because we're all starting to, I can't say forget about him, but slowly fading a little bit back out of the forefronts of our minds. If he pulls something off, I wouldn't be shocked. And this is the year to do it. Like we've mentioned, this is a weaker field, but if there's a year for it to happen, it's now.
Yeah, definitely. What was your number 7?
My number 7 on there, I had the women's 5K because Volby's the clear favorite in this by far and away, but Doris Lemongal is a very, very talented runner. But Parker Volby has had her number this whole year, and I don't see Volby losing to her. I don't see Volby losing to truthfully anyone in this race except for maybe Amy Bunge of Stanford, she has I think the biggest upside of any runner in this field. And if I had to pick someone who was going to upset Volby in the 5K, it would probably be Bunge. Another interesting aspect I have going on here is the BYU team tactics. BYU's got 3 runners qualified. They got Jenna Hutchins, Lexi Halliday Lowry, Aubrey Threnful. I cannot pronounce names. I'm terrible at that. I apologize. But having 3 runners all right there at 15:30 that are all in the field, and that's going to make things interesting. These finals are almost always slower than what the seat times end up being. And having those team tactics and having someone to run with and who can kind of slow, control the pacing, control the tactics will be incredibly useful.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, you know, kind of we talked about earlier with Florida, like how they used those team tactics in the SEC 3K, you know, to kind of simmer Parker Valby down a little bit to kind of make sure she's not exerting too much too early. You know, it just kind of goes to show like how that can come into play later on. Next I have the women's 800 at number 6. You know, kind of you talked about it earlier with you know, big names like, you know, Lindsey Butler. Talked about her as more of a kind of as a dark horse, you know, even though she's won an NCAA title. And you know, it's kind of up for grabs once again. You know, Michaela Rose, 159. I mean, you already talked about her, only wanted to go under 2 minutes. It'll just be an interesting race, you know, just that kind of that factor of it's kind of anyone's race.
And Gelva Gadait of Oklahoma State, she's a great runner as well. I could see her being up there in that mix. Megan Hunter's hard to count out. She's an All-American in the 800, but she's working around with some of that DMR tactics too. Could be a little bit more interesting with her there. But how much energy she really has to put through in the prelims, eventually the final, if she may be a little bit more tired than some of the other athletes in this in here. And then Carly Thomas is another one who should make things interesting. Just a good name to watch out for. She could have entered in the mile and been very competitive there too, but ultimately she chose to scratch the mile and focus on the 800, where she seated 5th. And she has. I'd always rather be an 800-meter runner with enough endurance to make it through the heats than a 1,500-meter runner with a little bit more speed. But that's just my personal take.
Yeah. Okay. So, what was your number 6?
I had the women's mile, but I feel like we covered that pretty well. So I want to go down next to what we both had at number 5, the men's 5K. All right. So I just want to go down some list of the names. This 5K. You got Nico Young, got Kyra Robinson, Parker Wolf, Hobbiton Samuel, Aaron Los Harris, Theo Quacks, Peter Maru, Alex Mayer. All of these guys are wonderful athletes, and all of these guys, I think, have at least a small shot of winning this title. Nico Young's definitely the favorite. He gets the chance to try and squash the narrative. People have been saying that he can't win an NCAA title and he won't in his career, and this is a great year for him to try and disprove that. He doesn't have to worry about grand blanks. It's a big worry off his shoulder. I think his biggest competition here is going to be Kai Robinson, someone who is he's had a wonderful outdoor season last year. It's a bit of a quieter indoor and cross-country season, not being quite up to the levels we've still seen, but he still ran 13:06. That is flying. And then Nico Young definitely has another advantage, and he's got two teammates that are both in All-American seating currently right now in Los Harris and Quacks. They've both run 13:16, which are top 20 times in NCAA history. And having two other guys up there that are your teammates could be the make or break difference that gives Nico Young the edge here.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely have like kind of the same talking points about that. You know, you go kind of the big narrative, not the big narrative, but like you said, will Nico Young be able to win a title? Last year in outdoor track and field, he went with like a mile to go, or not sure. He kind of went with a decent far amount away and was unfortunately swallowed up and wasn't able to place in the position that he might have wanted to. So it'll just be interesting to see, who is able to win this title, and will Nico Young be able to do it? So who do you have at number 4?
Number 4. I think I may have accidentally deleted that one. What do you have for number 4?
I put down the women's DMR as my number 4. Kind of like we talked about earlier with the men's DMR, it's kind of a similar narrative. You got big names. BYU is always a DMR, women's DMR threat. They've got a super good program with Coach Taylor over there, with the likes of Courtney Wayment, just graduated last year, and multiple-time NCAA champion. They're currently seeded at, number 4, which, I know you have them farther down the list, so I won't spoil too much. I'll let you add on a little bit later. But, yeah, it'll definitely be a really good and chaotic race.
We had some technical difficulties, and Donnie's next event was the men's mile. Here's what he had to say.
And last year, having 5 guys qualified for the national meet, which is insane. But another name that I think will be a huge factor in how this race plays out is Anas Isai of South Carolina. He's run stupid fast in the past, and if it wasn't for the Washington trio, I think we'd be talking to him about him as a multiple-time title winner at this point. And I think he's hungry, and I think he wants that next title. And you always got guys like Isaac Baston who are waiting in the wings there. He is just so consistent on the national stage. He's always finding a way to become an All-American. And yeah, I think I don't know who's going to win this race, but I'd bet my life savings on Isaac Baston finishing as an All-American.
Yeah, definitely. I've got number 3, I have the men's 3K. So kind of I like watching these, distance, more on the distance side races where, in the 3K, it's a lot more tactical. The farther up you get, the tactical side is a lot more important. When do I go? When do I make my move? So, you got Kai Robinson, who won the 5K and 10K at last year's outdoor national championships. He's obviously a favorite because, he's the fastest qualifier coming in there. Then you got a couple people, like Nico Young and some other people who are going to double in this race. So Nico doing the 5K, 3K double. It'll just be interesting to see, how that race plays out.
I think what you mentioned a lot about this being a bit more tactical race. The 3K is almost always more tactical than the 5K because you're getting guys they're doubling. Almost everyone in this field, like you mentioned, is doubling back. And that's going to have a huge effect on how these guys go out and run. Not many people can give 2 all-out PR type efforts on 2 back-to-back days. And this may drain a lot of them, and this may be a bit slower of a race. But one guy who I think could benefit from this scenario is Yassine Abdallah of Tennessee. He's a wonderful personality. He's slowly becoming more and more of a 3K specialist. When I think of Yassine Abdallah, I think of the 3K. And he's someone he won't worry about doubling. He's not entered in the 5K or the mile. And I think he's someone who could potentially finish as a top 3 or top 5 name next Saturday.
Yeah, definitely. He's been in the big names, like in cross country, track, running some top NCAA times in the 3K distance. Definitely, like you said, he's become more of a 3K specialist. It's his only event, as he's in a field where a lot of people are kind of using this race as like a double, kind of doing, whether it's mile 3K, 3K, 5K, what other double?
Or DMR 3K, which is very common at the international meet.
Yeah. So what did you have?
To your number 2.
Yeah. So I have the women's 5K at number 2. I know you had it like a little bit farther up. Definitely, I know the 5K is a little bit. It has a little bit less names. There's not Parker Valby doesn't have as much competition as she might have necessarily wanted or needed for this race to be necessarily like the most entertaining, but it's not like there's a complete lack. It's not like she's going to be completely running away with it. Like you touched on, Amy Bunnage of Stanford, who's a true freshman. She's been running a lot of team records and some top NCAA times this year. Could definitely give, Parker Valby a run for her money. And it'll definitely be interesting to see, whether if it does go to, kind of a solo time trial like race, whether Parker Valby gets to 2 miles in and in the last mile she just turns it on and goes and tries to maybe break her own NCAA record.
I'd be shocked if we see that in a championship scenario, especially with her coming back for the 3K. I don't think it'll be a solo time trial, but I think it would definitely be a single file strung out race. That's just how Parker Valby tends to run. I think that's how Doris Lemengall likes to run. I think that's how Amy Bunge likes to run. A lot of these women do better in these types of single file, you go straight to the gun, honest pace types of scenarios. I think that's what we're ultimately going to see next Friday.
Yeah, definitely. Kind of, I don't know why my brain just blanked, but it'll definitely be still an entertaining race nonetheless. And I definitely think it'll come down, the last, whether 800 meters, 400 meters, or the last 200 meters, because, whenever Parker Valby makes a move, it'll be kind of the big narrative going into this race. So I see you've got the women's 3K as your number 2. Kind of talked about that a little bit earlier, but do you have anything to add about that?
Probably 4 seconds faster than the number 3 seed, and I think we both agree she would have been faster if she'd been in a faster race where she wasn't in a time trial. I think it's safe to say that they've both run much faster than the rest of the field. I feel like they're the better athletes over this distance than the rest of the field, and that dual aspect is what's so appealing to me. But also what we get to see, there's a lot of women who can, if this race goes slow, like the 3K sometimes do at the national meet, there's a lot of women who can step up and be thorns in the side of the leaders. Like I said, Maya Ramsden, we don't know what kind of shape she's in. We don't know how her legs are going to be feeling. Billie Jeff Curry, a great tactical runner. Hilda Olmenmoy, another one who probably go out there with the front there. BYU's got 3 women in the race. That always makes things more interesting. Oklahoma State also 3 women in this race. You got a bit of a team dynamic, a bit of team battles going on there that can make the track kind of crowded. And you can't forget about Doris Lemengall. She kind of sneaks down there at the list at 15. She's another runner who will certainly be up there pushing the pace for as long as she can. I just don't think she's capable of beating Valby.
Yeah, definitely. It's kind of tough to argue with success, So kind of moving into our number ones, so we've got 2 different ones. I've got the men's mile at number 1. I'll talk about this for a little bit first and then I'll let you go. But, in the men's mile, you've got a lot of fast people in it. I kind of have noted Colin Salmon in this race, who, if you know, in high school, he was a very, very dominant runner. He's ranked 5th as a sophomore in this race. And really, Nico Young, he's scratched. But it'll be interesting to see, you said Anas Esai from South Carolina. You've got the Washington guys that just, once again, it'll be a definitely great race. Because, if you like the mile, this will definitely be one that if it goes out slow, it'll be entertaining. If it goes out fast, it'll be the same way.
I think one name I feel like I should bring up is Lucas Bonds of BYU, someone who has done – a year or two ago, he was phenomenal, out of this world. Like, who is this guy? Then he had a bit of a couple down seasons, but he is back. And welcome back to the national meet, Lucas. It's great to see you here. I just wanted to bring that up. And with his teammate Aiden Troutner, has done very well this season. Ran sub-4 in the BYU Smith Fieldhouse, which, let me tell you, I've raced there multiple times. It is not a track that you want to be running on. It's an incredibly slow track, very tight turns. I think his time is worth a little bit more than what is showing. I wouldn't be shocked if Aiden Troutner finishes as a top 5 name here. There's so many names here. I want to say all of them are top 5, but ultimately not all of them could be top 5.
Yeah, so kind of moving in, like I know you got the women's DMR. Like, what were your kind of thoughts going into that?
Well, so the way I like to think about it, the DMR, close races are always the best type of races to watch, from my perspective. And the DMR is 4,000 meters long. How often do you see you've got 4 teams all within a second, and you've got 7 teams all within 4 seconds, and you got the added tactics of who's going to be in what leg, who's doubling back from the mile prelims earlier in the day or the 800 prelims. And you got the NCAA record holders in this between Washington. I think Providence can pull up an upset. I wouldn't be shocked if that happened. They don't have as many women that are doubling in other events. I'm not sure what Notre Dame is how they're going to be playing with what Markovic has on her plate. BYU is always great. Megan Hunter, All-American over 800 100 meters. Riley Chamberlain, the sophomore, true sophomore, stepping up in a big name in a big ways at a big name meet. This could be make or break for the sophomore, and I'm very excited to see what she has for us. Stanford, with their wonderful crew of the middle distance runners, that this could be their rebound. They've had a bit of a quieter time, but they won this title last year, and they're not going to be willing to let that title go very easily. Oklahoma State, another one. I've said a lot about Bill Jeb Curry. Looks like she's going to be on the 1,200 meter leg at this meet. Got Calva Goodell, another All-American over 800 meters. Taylor Rowe, longtime veteran on that anchor leg. There's no one else I'd rather have there. It's just so many good teams there that can always mix things up. And Florida, they're sneaking in there, but at least Thorner and Philomena Askell are going to make sure they're seeded 12th, but I don't think they're going to finish 12th. I don't know who they're going to beat. There's just so many good teams in this race, but I think they're all great.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, kind of, it's a chaotic race. It could come down to anything. There's a lot of fast people. It'll depend on a lot of different factors. Who's running which legs? What happens? Will it be? I mean, obviously these people are going to be pushing, going fast because, got to fight for position and see what'll happen. So, I mean, that's all the topics we've got. Like, what are some last notes to kind of add in, whether we missed anything earlier or some things that you want to leave with?
I guess the last thing I got for you, NCAA is always a very competitive meet, especially the indoor one. It's the hardest national meet in the country to qualify for. I was talking about this with friends this morning. It's like you only get 16. And it's based purely off time. There's no race it in. Like you get it in the after season with the regional meets. It's the best meet in the country every year to watch. And I think you need to be tuning in. Simple as that. Yeah. That's all I got for you.
Well, thanks for coming on. Thanks for talking with me.
Thanks for having me.
It was a great conversation.